You enter the magic item shop, and there's a human man in blue mage's robes standing behind the counter. Welcome. Please, browse my wares. Tell me about the dagger.
I'd like to hear about the scroll.
What's the deal with the black book?
The dagger.
I want to hear about. And that was when the DM realized he needed a better way to get information about magic items to his players. Hi everyone, I'm Nick Olivo, and today I'll show you a way to convey information about magic items to your players without having to actually narrate it to them. And this way, when your players go into a shop and they want to examine everything that a shopkeeper has, you'll be prepared to handle that. Now, there are two approaches to doing this. The first does not require any API or special commands, and the second approach does, and I'll walk through both those approaches in this video. Before we dive in, I'd just like to thank Roll20 for sponsoring this video. So the first thing we want to do is set up our inventory. And so what I've done is placed a bunch of items on the table here. Each of these is its own object. And in fact, these all come from the Vile Tiles Tabletops art pack that's available on the Roll20 marketplace. I don't have a relationship with the author. I just think these are really cool, and I've used these in a bunch of my own games. So what you want to do is place all of the assets onto the table and then double click on one of them. So let's start with the dagger here. And what we're going to do is go down to the tooltip, and we're going to put in information about this item. So we'll say that this dagger is enchanted against the undead, and it costs 300 gold pieces. So now what I'm going to do is click this show box, because if we don't click show, then the tooltip won't appear when we hover over it. So I'm going to click save settings here, and now when I hover over this item, you can see that we have this little tooltip saying that the dagger is enchanted against the undead, and it costs 300 gold pieces. Awesome. And now we could just repeat that for all of the items in our shopkeeper's inventory. So tooltips provide a really quick and easy way to convey information to your players. But if you want something more sophisticated, like maybe you want your players to click on the item and then make a check to see if they can detect the magic radiating off of it or sense that the item is in fact cursed, well, that can be done with a mod called CheckItOut. And in order to use a mod, you will need a pro account. So let's see how that works. So the first thing you want to do is come out to your game's settings page, and in the Roll20 mod library dropdown here, just start looking for CheckItOut. There it is. That will bring it up. And this mod comes to us from Ada Lindberg. Ada, thank you very much for making this mod. It's really cool. Now this mod supports a bunch of different character sheets, as you can see right here. But if the system that you are playing is not in this list, Ada has left their contact information right here. You can reach out to them and you can request a new feature or a new sheet to be added. But once you've found the script, what you can do is just click Add Script. And incidentally, this may prompt you to say that there are certain dependencies that need to be installed as well. Just go ahead and say OK with that. And then the mod is installed and we are ready to go. Once the script is installed, you'll notice a couple of new macros over on the Collections tab here. You've got CheckItOut and CheckItOut GM Wizard. And in fact, if we click on an object, we'll see that there is a button for CheckItOut GM Wizard here in the top. So let's take a look at what that is. So if I click that button, it puts a wizard into the chat that allows us to set up what our players will find when they examine this particular item. So let's start out with the name. I'm just going to click on the name, and that gives me a text box to put in information about the item. So let's give it a name. We'll just call this the Black Book. And when we click submit, we see that the wizard refreshes and redisplays the information about the item here in the chat. So now we have our Black Book name. We want to set up our description next. And I've noticed that because the text box for input here is really small, what makes things easier is if you put your text in a separate window, sort of like what I'm doing right here in Notepad, and I'm just going to copy this text out of Notepad and paste it into the text box here, and we'll submit that. So now we have our black book. It's a book bound in strange black leather, and that information is going to be visible to anybody who looks at the book. They don't need to make any kind of a check or anything in order to see that it's a book bound in strange black leather. So our next item here is max distance, and this is useful if you were setting up these items to be discovered in a dungeon. So how many squares away would a character's token need to be in order to learn or detect this item? And in this case, because we're just doing this as a shopkeeper's inventory, I'm going to leave this as infinity. And we can also play a sound effect when our characters investigate an object. But personally, I find that a little distracting if we put too many things going on at once. So I'm going to not have these sound effects play. I'm just going to leave that blank. Okay, now we come to the theme, and this is where we're going to be able to define the checks that we want our character to be able to perform. So we click on theme, and then this lets us choose which character sheet we're working with. So I'm using D&D 5e by Roll20. We'll submit that, and now when the wizard refreshes, we can select which skill checks we want to make. So I'm going to click skill checks here, and the first skill I want to set up is Arcana. So I'm going to submit that. It's going to prompt me for the DC for this check. So I'm going to say this is a DC 15 check. And then what information will be revealed if the character makes this check? So let's go back to our trusty notepad window. And I want to put in this sentence here that the book radiates necromantic energy and will grant bonus damage to any necromantic spell. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it in here. And we'll submit that. And now we can see that that's updated and we have the Arcana 15 check. But we can have multiple checks here. So that necromantic energy damage bonus sounds pretty cool, but this book is also cursed. And I only want that to be detected if you make a religion check. So I'm going to click skill checks again. And this time around, I'm going to select religion. We'll submit. And we'll make this a slightly higher check. We'll say this is a DC 17. Submit that. And then what will they learn if they make that religion check? Well, let's bring back our notepad window. And I want to say that this book radiates necromantic energy and will cause the holder to suffer 1 point of wisdom damage each day they possess it. So we're going to copy that and paste that in and submit. And now over here on the right, again, we see that the refresh has occurred. We've got our DC 15 Arcana and our DC 17 Religion. Now we can also use passive skills. And this doesn't mean that the character will just automatically detect things without actively making a check. Rather, what it means is if the character's passive skill is higher than the die roll that they made, then we will use the passive score instead. And we can set that to yes or no. I'm going to leave it as no for the time being. Just keep the default value because I want them to be actively making that check and using the die roll that they made. Incidentally, for those of you playing D&D 5th edition, as far as I can tell, this mod does not give you the ability to make checks with advantage or disadvantage. If anybody knows better, please sound off in the comments, but as far as I can tell, this is just a one roll type operation. So now we've got everything set up and our character can check something out. And the way they're going to do that is they're going to select their token and then they're going to run that CheckItOut macro. And so they can put this into their bar, for example, and then check it out. They will pick the item they want to check out. And then the GM gets information whispered to them. So I can see that Mumford is checking out the black book and Mumford rolled a 15 on their Arcana check and a 24 on their religion check. So this is the information that Mumford receives when they check it out. They actually get all three pieces of information. There's the initial description and then the bit from the Arcana check and then the bit from the religion check. So Mumford has learned everything about this book and now they have that information whispered to them. Not everybody sees it, only the whispered player sees it, and the GM sees that Mumford checked it out and made successful checks in order to learn that information. If Mumford checks it out again, so if we click on the black book a second time, you see that no checks are made. It just says Mumford is checking out the black book, so the DM gets that information, and then the same information is provided. And that's because the mod stores the rolls that the character made previously and retains exactly what those results were, so it knows what information to give back to the player again, so they don't remake the checks every time, so somebody can't forget something. But what that means is they can't actually try again unless you click this Reset Cache button. What this will do, if we click Reset Cache, this will forget the rolls Mumford made previously and allow them to try again. And this can be handy if maybe the character has gotten some new insight, maybe they've cast a divination spell that's going to help them make these checks better. They've got some other circumstance that would allow them to try again. We can say Reset Cache. You get prompted, are you sure? Say yes to that. The wizard reloads, and now Mumford can make that check again. And this time around, you see that Mumford rolled a 23 on the religion check and a 29 on their arcana check, and they got all the information again. If you want to remove one of these items, like let's say we don't want the religion check anymore, then what we can do is run skill checks, choose religion, set the DC to be 17 again, and then leave the details section blank. And that removes the religion check from the list of checks. So there you have it. That's how you can convey information about magic items to your players. Just want to say thanks again to Ada Lindberg for the Check It Out script, and thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And until next time, folks, have a great day.